Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. Now, tensions between US and Iran continue to rise. President Donald Trump, in his latest tirade, issues a direct threat to Iran, suggesting that the Islamic Republic will be obliterated if Iran attacks his country's interests. And this is coming just days after he was saying that he was prepared for talks with Iran. Here's his tweet verbatim. He said, "If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again." So now Venezuela and Iran are out of the oil production race. OPEC countries have met and decided that they will not increase production, and they have ample stockpiles. So now oil prices are rising. Riyadh has also accused Tehran of ordering last Tuesday's drone attacks on 2 oil pumping stations in the kingdom, which was initially claimed by Yemen's Houthi group. Even though Saudi Arabia says that it seeks to avert war, it is ready to respond with force. Now, we will be discussing all this and more, and how this transition is taking place or evolving in terms of US-Iran relations and affecting the countries in the region. I would like to introduce our guests who will be speaking to us. We have with us Mr. Luciano Zaccara. He's a Middle East expert who will be joining us from Doha. And we have Mr. Khalil Charles, a deputy news editor with the TRT in Istanbul. And we have Mr. Mohammad Al Qubiban, a political analyst, joining us from Riyadh. Welcome to all three of you here at Newswire. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Luciano. Trump's latest tweet was, in a way, his most aggressive with Iran. Do you think President Trump thinks going to war with Iran is actually in his favor?
Well, unfortunately, it's very difficult to say, because 2 days ago he was saying that he didn't want to go to war, and actually he was very upset with Bolton because he was making clear that he was not interested, but the policy that Bolton was driving United States to was driving United States to war. But then we get this Twitter yesterday that was very threatening, and again threatening Iran to destroy the whole country. I mean, it's very difficult to assess whether Trump is really interested in keeping peace, or he's really willing to engage in a direct confrontation, military confrontation with Iran. I mean, I tend to think that he's not in the mood to, but the way in which he's constructing his own narrative and foreign policy is driving him to have this very aggressive discourse, thinking that military pressure and military threats is the main tool to make other state actors like North Korea or Iran to sit down and negotiate, something that so far is not working and did not work with North Korea, and in the 40 years after the Islamic Revolution never worked with Iran.
That's a really interesting point, Mr. Luciano. Mr. Mohammed, let me ask you, do you see eye to eye with what Mr. Luciano is saying, that in a way Trump could also be sort of setting an example to other states that are right now trying to negotiate with Trump, like North Korea?
No, I think if he's doing such a thing like this, he's completely poor strategic leader. I mean, it's not the area. This is not North Korea. The area already experienced a conflict. They already, it's not only Iran, and it has its own conflict with the one neighbor. No, Iran is having a conflict with the Arab state. North Korea is different. It's only North Korea and the South Korean conflict. Here is different. And that's a very good point, really, you triggered, which is he think that by moving the carriers and start talking about Iran has to behave, their leadership has to sit in the table and talk. No, this doesn't go this way.
Right.
And that's what I really said at the beginning, last point. Moving the carriers really will not escalate the tension, but it will send a message to the Iranian people that there will be no war. There will be no even a conflict. Even though the Iranian today, this morning, the Houthis fired 2 long weapons toward Mecca and Taif. Guess what? That means the escalation is going on through their arms.
Right.
So what I thought is, the American leaders did not play it really smart.
Right. So, Mr. Khalil, what do you think? President Trump went off track here in trying to achieve whether it was a regime change in Iran or whether it was trying to constrain it in stopping what it has allegations against Iran on proxy wars, etc.
In many ways, what President Trump has said is irrelevant to the Iranians and, in fact, irrelevant to the whole of the Middle East conflict, because it really depends on Iran itself. Because inside Iran, there are divisions amongst hard-right people, and there are divisions among more liberal people, etc. So the course and the direction of what happens in this area really depends on Iran itself. And let's be quite clear, the movements have been made within the area of the Persian Gulf, and what America are doing is by sending carriers. This will, I disagree with Mohammed, this will inflame the situation. And it will give the hard right more of ammunition to say, right, we must move against the West.
He mentioned here, Mr. Charles mentioned here, Saudi Arabia is being pulled in here also now, especially with what it's seen in the past few weeks as attacks to its oil tankers and its pipeline. Now, it's coming out with statements very similar to what Trump has said. We want to avert war. We want to sit down and we want to talk. But at the same time, they're making all the moves to prepare for war. What do you make of this? Is this just psychological warfare?
Well, I was following up what the Saudi Arabia was doing, how it was reacting to what happened in Fujairah and the pipelines. And even though, of course, the press was very aggressive regarding Iran, so far there was no unofficial statement blaming directly Iran to be behind what happened with the oil tankers in Fujairah. Of course, they accused directly the Houthis because they also attributed to what happened in the pipelines. It's not clear what really happened in Fujairah, despite the fact that the United States is pointing out directly to Iran. But my impression, maybe I'm wrong, but my impression is that Saudi Arabia is also trying to prevent an escalation. I mean, not a verbal or a narrative escalation, but yes, a military escalation that can drive directly to a war with Iran. And that way they are preventing, or they are avoiding to specifically say that Iran was behind that. Because if this happened, if they are accusing Iran that they were behind the attack in Fujairah, it would be declared an act of war. Once you have a declaration of act of war, you have to declare the war. There is no other option to retaliate or to refrain from reacting this way. So I think that both Iran also was very clear. Khamenei was very clear. Of course, they will prepare for war, they will prepare for resistance, whatever, but they were clear saying that they don't want to initiate any war. So I think that both Saudi Arabia and Iran are very clear that a war will not be beneficial for any actor in the region, and that they will try to prevent this to happen at any cost. The problem is I'm not quite sure that Bolton is in that side of the...
Let's expand a little, Mr. Luciano, something you said. Let's expand a little on. You said that you feel that maybe Saudi Arabia is trying to play a role of a mediator, trying to de-escalate tensions between US and Iran. Mr. Mohammed, I want your take on this. Do you feel that this might be possible given the history that Saudi Arabia and Iran have had with each other?
Well, the history is talking about it. Now, if you watch the Secretary of State or the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 days ago, he announced what the Iranian has done, especially the Revolution Guards in Saudi and their arms. Many times the Saudis tried to sit and talk, but by the proper way with the Iranians. But unfortunately, the Iranians are shifted their strategy. I think rather than to export the revolution, they start building their arms. And that's caused more problem to negotiate with Iran. So the negotiation with Iran, it can't be started till they stop their Hezbollah, their Houthis in Yemen. Then it can be done. Now,
but it could be said, on the same note, it could be said the same for Saudi Arabia, that in order to set an example itself, it would have to follow its own advice. I mean, it is undeniable of its role also is very similar to what Iran's is in the region.
But that's, maybe I disagree with you, Madam. The Saudis, look at what happened, small incident that I think one of their Marines It has difficulties in the Gulf Sea, and the Saudis really. That was I feel proud of it.
Okay, so do you think Saudi Arabia would be able to step in and effectively de-escalate if things got even more heated than they are between US and Iran?
This is what they will do their best there to not to be a war. They will do their best to de-escalate the problems, and they will do their best to not to even trigger the Iranians to do such a serious problem. But I don't think so that the Iranians, especially the arms of the Iranians, people are listening. Did you notice that what happening in Iraq? They yesterday, I think, yesterday they bombed somewhere near the green area. And who is that? That's the government Iraqis? No, I don't think so. That's the arms of the Iranians. What happened in Al Fujairah? What happened in the pipelines?
Well, we don't know yet for sure, do we? I mean, we don't have that kind of evidence. And these investigations are underway. And while they are, it just seems a little scary, a little too rash to jump to conclusions. But Mr. Charles, let me bring you in here. The EU seems to be right now the only major power willing to stand up to the US on Iran. But does it really have the strength? Does it have the position to do anything?
Well, certainly the EU, I should say, are concerned about that. And the Americans are even more concerned that they don't really have a partner should they have to go to war with Iran. And that's really the issue, because the EU want to continue the deal, the oil deal with Iran. They want to continue business with Iran. And so therefore, the Americans do have a form of pressure coming from the Europeans that they wouldn't normally have. Normally there'll be a united position. So I see the pressure that's being applied on Iran at the moment has its problems unless the Europeans can be brought on board. And part of this is trying to force a situation where Iran's going to do something very stupid, and of course the Europeans are going to have to come on board and condemn some action. So it's a very dangerous game that's being played here, and I can't really understand the countries who are in the direct firing line of a country like Iran would do anything else but de-escalate. But the statements that have been made are also provided some kind of ammunition to say that they're not de-escalating, but rather they are saying that if it comes to war, that they will defend themselves, and in fact, they're part of the escalation process.
But also, Mr. Charles, some of this are coming out quite bluntly with this, their take on what is happening, and they're saying Iran is just being encircled, and these are just words right now, statements that don't mean much because the actions speak otherwise. And we've seen the ships being moved, the US ships being moved closer to Iran, and Saudi Arabia now in the fold. What is your take on it? Do you see any weightage in this analysis?
I actually think that the pressure which has been placed on Donald Trump and the American administration from Europe means that the Iranians actually have a position whereby they are in a sense, on a stronger hand. Let me explain. The Americans want to renegotiate the deal. They want to have something that's palatable to the Europeans as well as palatable to the Israelis and palatable to the world. And so this is all part of it. This is all part of their attempt to go and put Iran in a position where they're going to have to renegotiate a deal in order to get some of the very crippling sanctions. And those sanctions, I have to advise you, are very crippling at the moment. That's going to hurt, that continue to hurt Iran. And so to get some of those sanctions lifted, they're going to have to play ball. And this is part and parcel of that strategy to do so.
Right, but Mr. Luciano, on the note, if these sanctions, this deal was not that great, President Trump had no qualms about saying how horrible the deal was. He wants to renegotiate. The sanctions have been crippling for so long. There was no evidence that Iran was violating the deals, the points of the JCPOA. Couldn't there have been another method, another approach to renegotiate the deal? Or was there resistance from Iran?
Well, I mean, what it cannot be denied is that the sanctions that they were implemented in 2006 and mainly the 2010 ones, that they were very harmful for the Iranian economy, were to some extent the mechanisms to force Iran to sit down and negotiate the JCPOA. And I think in that sense, economically harmed Iran was forced to negotiate something that they were reluctant to do in the previous years when the threats that they were issued against Iran were on the military level. I think that the mistake that Trump is making now is that he's using the same tools and in much more aggressive way, showing military muscle to say Iran will knee on itself and we will destroy the country. And they think that with this narrative, they will gain a new deal that Trump wants to do. I mean, this is not working. Iran was faced the war with Iraq for 8 years, and actually this was considered by some in Iran as a blessing to have this war. The idea of fighting for the good cause is nothing that the Iranian, or at least a more hardliner Iranian, will refrain from. Actually, this is the people that they are within the Revolutionary Guard. So using this technique to force Iran to sit down and negotiate a new deal, once you said that there is no information that says Iran was not complying with the JCPOA. There was a nuclear agency report lately. European Union is supporting the deal. So why Iran would sit down now to negotiate something? Because Trump says that they're going to destroy the country.
There's also a big question of sovereign pride here. Mr. Mohammed, of course, adding to the pressure after the sanctions and basically putting them in a position where it would be a sign of weakness if Iran didn't retaliate, what President Trump has done. Would you think that maybe this war hysteria that has been created in a way is now being very counterproductive?
I think it should be kind of productive. Both of my colleagues, I think, with my respect to them, they are talking about that the Iranian as a green peace or people are looking for peace. My friends and madam, the Iranians with the nuclear deal, it's a long subject, but what I think is they did not, they always trying to, let's say, threatening their neighbors by using the long-range weapons and many issues. The more critical things is during the Hajj area or Hajj time, what we experience from the Iranians, and they mean it. So what's happening right now in GCC, what I think, I hope that the leaders in Iran will reset and think about like what they are saying. There is a nice talk from their leaders, but I see a different from their army people.
So the GCC summit, when they're getting together, the Arab countries are coming together, they've had a summit to discuss this very threat. What do you think they'll achieve right now? And how will this affect Iran's take on how it's behaving in these entire dynamics?
We've been discussing with the Iranian people for about 40 years. We consider it as intervene in the other countries. And they're just stuck in mind. They don't want to talk about it. They come up with the very critical, important Islamic beliefs that they're saying the leader of the Al-Murshid in Iran, that he is a completely zero mistakes. And we have to believe him till other body replacing him. So they are thinking to change the ideology in the area. So how you can communicate with such a people like this?
Right.
Plus what they are doing in Kuwait, what they are doing in Bahrain. Look what they are doing in Bahrain.
What you said, exporting the revolution as part of institution, it's there, and this is a problem with Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region. Mr. Charles, I'd like to hear your comment on what Mr. Mohammed has just said.
It seems to me that there's alliances now. People are trying to get alliances even before any kind of conflict is there, in order to ensure that there's a block of people, there's a block of countries against the Iranian/Qatar intervention. And I think that's all very, very disturbing. I think that at the moment, that none of it's in the interest of the region by if you like, positioning oneself that the region could be destabilized in this kind of way. So again, I think a de-escalation has to happen. And for me, that de-escalation really is a decision that Iran has to make. But at the same time, I think the Europeans will be helping Iran in that by supporting any efforts there are to keep the nuclear deal going.
And it certainly does not help, Mr. Luciano. According to the U.S. Special Envoy, Brian Hook, He comes out with a statement saying that Iran used to send Hezbollah up to $700 million a year, which was essentially 70% of their revenue of Hezbollah's. But after the sanctions, it has decreased to $10 billion since last November. Do you think that then it kind of justifies the U.S. sanctions on Iran?
Yeah, the objective of the sanction is to harm the economy in a way that Iran cannot use money to fund allies and proxies in other places. Of course, it is working. The point is that what is the objective of sanctions and what is the objective of the policy that the United States implementing regarding Iran is to change the JCPOA, which was specifically dedicated to prevent Iran to become a nuclear military power, which is actually what it was doing. Okay, but if the idea, according to Bolton and basically are trying to do is to produce a regime change, which was always the objective of other actors in the region, I don't think it's going to work. Because the roots of the system are very well established 40 years ago, and so far this didn't happen. And actually, I'm not sure if other countries have the right to pretend that one country should change their system because they don't like it. Right. I mean, we don't like it many other countries in the region, and we are not forcing them to change, or we are not forcing to change their regime or their religions or their ideologies. Right. Why United States can do that? I don't agree with the idea that Iran needs to change the regime because I don't like it. What I want is Iran not to become a military nuclear power, and the JCPOA was working on that.
Okay, so you think the JCPOA was working on that? Of course, the U.S., Saudi Arabia now, and other regional actors are starting to ally together against Iran on the very basis that it wasn't. But Mr. Mohammed, what do you think would be the strategy best for all those involved here to move forward from where they are right now in de-escalating tensions?
In negotiation, simple. Negotiation with the regime. By the way, no one, they're in the, let's say, all players saying that we like to change the regime in Iran. No, nothing about changing regime. Only let's drive this regime to behave properly with their neighbors. By the way, you knew the trade between the Iranian and the Emirates is the most highest between the GCC. So there is a relation. There is a communication in between as a business-wise.
Right.
But unfortunately, what everybody should do, let's get back again to the negotiation. Okay. Everybody has to compromise. Everybody has to give.
But there also has to be somebody who is sort of overseeing as a mediator. Mr. Charles, very quickly, we've got the last 4 days left here. Who would step up in the international community and play that role?
I think it's a question of time. If the American president remains Donald Trump and the policies that he's been employing until and past 2020, then we're going to have a difficulty in finding any kind of real negotiator. But I think if there is a replacement in the United States, then they could take the proper position of not only negotiating the Iranian situation, but also the whole of the situation in the Middle East, which is, of course, deteriorated since the Trump administration. So it largely depends on whether Trump remains or whether Trump goes as to whether we'll have a form of negotiation, a form of mediation that will work.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Charles there, also Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Luciano for giving your time and a wonderful input to Newswire. We'll take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. Turkish President Erdogan has said that Ankara and Moscow will jointly produce the S-500 missile defense system now. After the S-400 purchase from Russia, this will be a second round of a deal over military arsenal. Now, the West is clearly not very happy. The Pentagon has warned that Turkey should not go ahead with this deal, and if it does, it will lose out on not just the F-35 jets delivery to Ankara, but also the Patriot system. Now, the fighter jet S-400 was designed by the Russians, and these identify and they destroy fifth-generation fighter aircrafts like those produced by the US, the F-35 in particular. So how is this going to move forward, this triangle between the US, Ankara and Moscow? And for that, I would like to welcome our guests who are joining us. We have with us Mr. Mohammed Walid, a journalist from Istanbul, who will be speaking to us on this matter. And also we have with us Mr. Leonid Savin, a geopolitical analyst, joining us from Moscow. Welcome to both of you to Newswire. Mr. Walid, let's talk about this latest. President Erdogan has come out and said he seems completely undeterred by the Pentagon's warnings. He seems to be going ahead completely, or do you think that maybe there are some back-channel talks going on with the U.S.?
Yes, Turkey is also in discussion with U.S. Turkey is a long-standing ally of United States, so definitely Turkey will not want U.S. to be disappointed. But on the other hand, Turkey is also thinking its own security. All the tensions and escalations in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East made Turkey think again to enhance its air defense capability. And Turkey was asking from United States for some solution, but they never replied positively. Mm-hmm. Now they have come with some Patriot deals, and Turkey is also negotiating with United States. Besides that, President Erdogan has confirmed that they're getting those S-400s within a very short time, and this will be operational in Turkey within this year. And that's what President has said. But at the same time, Turkey has other problems and other defense deals with the United States. That's right. They're negotiating with.
It's something that it's got too much on the line with the U.S., I understand you saying. But Mr. Leonid, there is also statements coming from top officials in Turkey about this suggestion that the U.S. says that we can't have you buy from Russia because our system comes under risk. And here Turkey comes up and says, well, you should have sold the Patriot system to us when we asked for it. Do you think there is some validity in this allegation?
I think in general it's a good idea to start more close cooperation with Turkey. But at first must be released a project to provide S-400 systems to Turkey from Russia. Then we should to separate political rhetoric of Mr. Erdogan from the reality. Because Russia never provided our weapon system to countries who act in a hostile way against Russia. Russia never provided weapon system to countries members of North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's a kind of a special deal with Turkey. And S-400 will be provided soon. Then we will start negotiation how to cooperate for next level.
Why do you think Russia would make an exception here with Turkey, Adam, like this?
Because it's a geopolitical reality. We should cooperate with Turkey more closely. Not only Turkey, but also some regional actors like Iraq, for example, like Iran, and also for Pakistan. So I think it will be very good for Turkey and many regional actors because there will be no more influence from the West, and especially from United States, because United States play like double game. They interested only to get benefits for Washington.
You don't think, Mr. Leonid, that maybe the possibility that the U.S.'s Patriot air defense system it could be or the F-35, the sale of the jets, F-35 could also be one of the reasons why it was really pushing on the deal that Ankara buys from them, the air defense system?
We see that already Washington tried to press Ankara not to buy any kind of Russian weapon system, and not only it's about military cooperation. They interested to stop any kind of cooperation with Russia. But reality is that Turkey needs Russia and Russia needs Turkey. So its decision must be done in a very wise way. What needs Turkey? We are neighbor countries. The United States is far. And if we remember how entry of Turkey to North Atlantic Treaty Organization was done, I think it was a serious mistake done in the 20th century during the Cold War era. So now situation is changed. We joined the multipolar era, and we should take joint responsibility for security of Mediterranean and Near East region with Turkey.
Right.
So it is the reason.
Okay, so Mr. Mohammed Walid, what is your take on it? Now here Turkey is juggling two relationships very crucial to it, Russia and the US. And of course, both of them have a very important role to play geopolitically with Turkey, like Mr. Leonid has pointed out very vividly. What is your opinion how Turkey is doing in managing this balance with these two countries?
Well, regarding the S-400 and F-35 issue, Turkey called on U.S. to establish a joint team to analyze that how S-400s possess threat to F-35. So, I mean, right now, the United States Congress has been saying that the secrets of F-35 can be leaked to Russia through S-400 radars backdoors. Now, Turkey cleared its position that we are getting S-400s, and Turkey is a partner in F-35, so Turkey wants to have both of the weapons. Mm-hmm. So they have negotiating with the United States. Turkey will ask them to research on how they can make a possible solution so that Turkey can use both of the systems. Now, S-400 was a necessity for Turkey, a quick need that Turkey has acquired from Russia already. As President said, it's a done deal. Mm-hmm. And F-35 Turkey has been a long-standing partner in the project since the development phase. So this is the situation Turkey is trying through diplomacy to solve the crisis.
Do you think this is a point of view that U.S. is to accept? Because from what is going on in Pentagon with its latest statement, doesn't seem to be giving any leeway to Turkey.
Well, if you have observed, United States has become softer in their stance. At the beginning, they were extremely against the idea. Then they started negotiation. Now they are saying Turkey to delay the delivery of the S-400s. They are requesting Turkey to get them in 2020, but Turkey will consider their offer as well. Turkey will assess every situation here, but Turkey, it's very clear that will never risk its air defense security. Because if you, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Leonid, I just want to get your view here. Do you agree that maybe the U.S. has started to soften its stance, considering the kind of negotiations taking place that might just meet them halfway on the possibility of any leaks or with the systems that the U.S. is selling Turkey?
No, for my opinion, the main problem is Trump administration not predictable. They can do decision today and change mind tomorrow. So it's very difficult to deal with United States. You see about the tension between Russia and United States. There many false accuse about Russian interference into political elections. But Russia not interfered in elections, so it's a problem. And I think that United States will try to find a tool of influence on Turkey and try to stop any kind of deal. And for my opinion, this deal must be released because it's not only political, but also from economical point of view, it's very rational. Russian defense systems more cheaper than Western systems, and for example, range of S-400 is more large than American or Western European, the same kind of analog systems. So both from political point of view and from economical point of view, it's a good decision for Turkey. But Turkey should be prepared for pressure from Washington.
Now, Mr. Mr. Walid, what the US has already warned Ankara against are sanctions. But at the same time, like you mentioned yourself, Mr. Erdogan is interested in having a sort of a deal where they can talk about these loopholes that would put the US defense system on compromise. However, the US has not responded yet to any such committee, any such group that could be formed. Even the NATO has not responded. What does this indicate, in your opinion?
Well, it seems that NATO is pretty much fine with Turkey getting S-400s. It's mostly US's problem. And Turkey and US doesn't have only one role. This F-35 S-400 issue, they have a lot of problems to solve. Now, Turkey and America's interests are colliding in Syria, in Eastern Mediterranean. United States is heavily arming the neighboring countries like Egypt, UAE, and other Libya also. So it's definitely Turkey cannot remain silent. Turkey needs to find a solution to protect its country. Now, this is their motherland, and America is coming from thousands of kilometers away, and they're arming this place. And now there is a new tension about the gas fields in Eastern Mediterranean. Now, instead of solving those problems, America always pending this and putting pressure on Turkey. So Turkey understands the situation, and they will take their decision according to protect their own interests. And we can see the move. Now, if they want to put some sanctions on Turkey, they can, but it won't be good for both of the countries' future.
Mr. Leonid, the allegation that the US has against Turkey, but at the same time, Turkey doesn't see eye to eye with Russia on a lot of policies in the region also. So what could it be that they could employ to move this balance forward, this strategy forward, that could affect positively in the region?
We should see on facts what happens in this region. Many countries, many actors, they are not trust to United States anymore. But Russian influence, especially in Syria, provides some kind of trust between different countries. So there is some kind of logic of Arabic states there that they respect friends and respect states who support allies. Where Syria now is a kind of clear message to all countries of regions that we support our friends and allies there, and we are open to cooperation to any countries. United States so provide double game. For example, from one side, they try to keep cooperation with Turkey, and from other side, they provide military assistance to Kurdish militants who use this arm against Turkey. So what is the question? So on which side United States are? And I think many countries and geopolitical actors and political parties now aware about real objectives of United States, and that Russia and other actors, maybe China and maybe other countries who would like to secure this region, are more trustful actors there.
Right. And there's also statements coming out from Mr. Erdogan that not only did he say that I'm not going to go back on my deal with Russia, in fact, on the S-400s, I'm going to even investigate and look into the S-500s. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much stopping him right now. Do you think U.S. would go all out besides the sanctions, but also risk losing Turkey as an ally?
No, I don't think so that U.S. will risk Turkey losing as an ally. But they will put pressure on Turkey. It's very obvious. But yes, President Erdogan has clarified that Turkey will not take any risk about its air defense. And after the S-400s, there will be some joint production in S-400s. And they will also try to assess the opportunity to jointly manufacture S-500s that would be very effective against intermediate range ballistic missiles also. So, I mean, Turkey will try to do its best to get all those technology and the local production.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Leonid,
so
right, sorry, continue, please finish your sentence.
So it's Turkish national policy to develop indigenous defense technology. And
right, but also the timing, to interrupt you there, but we're running out of time. We've got the last 30, 40 seconds. Mr. Leonid, I just want to quickly get your view on the timing of this has also been very crucial. When US came out with this threat to Turkey, just then Moscow has agreed to request from Turkey of creating a joint working group over the Syrian rebel enclave of Idlib. Do you see that maybe alliances are shifting from what historically was between these three countries?
Alliance already exists, and we cooperate with Turkey in the Syria region as well as with Islamic Republic of Iran and Iraq. So we just need to enlarge this kind of cooperation and maybe to provide bilateral ties and flow of information between us. And I think it's good steps.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Leonid and Mr. Walid. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for Newswire today. We will be seeing you tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.